Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the Thames Valley. A catalogue of abuse, a GP from West Berkshire who sexually assaulted a child at a surgery. We hear from the victim who is speaking out after 30 years.
I couldn't take this secret with me forever. I had to tell the truth and I had to break the silence.
The women from Wiltshire murdered by their ex-partners. Their families now want to stop the killers from living nearby once they're released.
It petrifies us, the thought of bumping into him. It shouldn't be us that are driven out of the area, it should be them.
But for how long? Teachers warn that cuts to music lessons in schools is threatening the next generation of musicians.
And we're deep underground for a dazzling arts festival where there is light at the end of the tunnel. Good evening. A former GP from West Berkshire abused a child repeatedly in the 1970s and 80s, a jury has found.
Dr. Robin Borthwick, who is 78 and from Bradfield, sexually assaulted the victim at his surgery and at 2 private addresses.
30 years on, his victim has spoken out about the abuse he suffered, saying Borthwick tore his life to pieces. Juliet Fletcher reports from Reading Crown Court.
This is a case of a family doctor abusing his position of trust. Now, the jury here at Reading Crown Court have heard how Robin Borthwick, who's 78 and now retired, indecently assaulted a boy at his GP surgery in West Berkshire and at 2 other private addresses. Now, the incidents took place in the 1970s and 80s, beginning when the child was just 8 years old. The court was told that Borthwick carried out the assaults under the guise of medical examinations. And giving evidence, the victim said he thought that Borthwick was doing just what doctors do, but he was confused and he was terrified. Now, the victim went to police many years later in 2021, and he told me why he hadn't felt able to speak out about it earlier.
As a child, I put it away in a box. I didn't have the emotional intelligence to process it. He told me to keep quiet, and it took me 33 years to talk to anyone about it. I was suffering from depression, and I went to speak to a counsellor, and I started to open up about it. And I realised I couldn't take this secret with me forever. I had to tell the truth, and I had to break the silence. And my principal motivation has always been to give a voice to other victims, that by speaking out for other victims out there, it's so important just to tell someone.
The jury was told that after his arrest, Borthwick confessed to a monk that he had indecently assaulted a boy many years earlier. He said he knew it was wrong and he regretted it. Now, police seized devices from Borthwick, including a phone and a laptop, but found nothing on them. Joanna Williams from West Berkshire CID said investigating a case of this nature many decades on comes with its challenges.
It's very difficult because, of course, we don't have the forensic capability, CCTV, even mobile phone data that we would have now, or in cases sort of since the noughties onwards. Cases as old as the 70s and 80s, there isn't that. So it's very difficult. We were very fortunate to have a witness who was able to tell us some things that the suspect had said, which strengthened our case.
Dr. Borthwick has not been in court. He suffers from dementia and was deemed unfit to stand trial, and as such this has been a trial of facts. Now, the jury considered all the evidence today and found that Robin Borthwick did carry out all the acts as charged. Afterwards, the victim in this case read out an impact statement describing the devastating consequences that Borthwick's actions had had on both him and his family. He said, "He took what he wanted and he tore my life to pieces." Now, the judge has limited powers in a case like this and he ordered an absolute discharge, but he commended the victim for speaking out, saying that he has given others a voice. He said, "Your strength has turned something evil into something good for the future."
Juliet Fletcher reporting there. Next tonight, the families of 2 women who were violently murdered by their former partners in Wiltshire are calling for greater restrictions on where their killers can live once they come out of prison.
Julie Butcher was killed near Swindon in 2005 and Ellie Gould in 2019. Now, both families are campaigning to stop murderers from living near to their victims' relatives once they're released. Will Charlie has been speaking to them.
Back then, we wasn't aware of what domestic abuse was, what coercive and controlling was, and stalking. So when Julie decided to leave after an incident that happened, she left in 2005, and within 2 weeks, she was dead.
Julie Butcher's life was cruelly cut short when her estranged husband returned to their home in Chiseldon and strangled her. Julie was just 25 and had 3 young children. Her murderer was sentenced to life in prison and spent just over 13 years behind bars. When he eventually was paroled, Julie's family were given an exclusion map, which banned him from coming near their homes and schools. But Julie's sister Emma feels it didn't go anywhere near far enough.
We just thought, how are we going to live in an area when we know this man's going to come out, and we'd have to live in the same area, too scared to go out of our house, too scared to go to the shops.
Bumping into a man who murdered a member of your family. That's a fear fellow campaigner Carol Gould shares, since her daughter Ellie was murdered in 2019. The 17-year-old was studying for her A-levels when her ex-boyfriend came to her family home in Caen and savagely killed her. Although Thomas Griffiths is still currently in prison, Carol is terrified that the law currently means when he is released, he may be able to live near to her once again.
So it was only when I met Emma and she told me about her case, I was absolutely horrified that the radius could be as little as 2.5 miles, which means that Griffiths could come back and live in Derry Hill, which is, it petrifies us, the thought of bumping into him. There needs to be much better rights for the victims.
The pair are now calling for the law to be changed so that convicted murderers cannot live within 50 miles of their victims' families when they are released from prison. Carol says this would finally place the rights of victims above those of perpetrators.
A murderer is on a life sentence. Their conviction is never spent. We're the ones that have the life sentence. We've lost our loved ones. We should be allowed to live in the area where our friends and family and our support network are, in peace, and not live in fear of bumping into them. It shouldn't be us that are driven out of the area. It should be them that are not allowed back into the area.
Well, in response to calls for a 50-mile exclusion zone for murderers, a spokesperson for the Ministry of Justice said murderers already face some of the strictest licence conditions, including exclusion zones to protect the victims' families. If these conditions are broken, they do face being sent straight back to prison.
A driver who sped past a funeral cortege during a police pursuit in Oxford has been jailed. Officers spotted the car driven by Jason Dewsbury travelling at 90 miles per hour in a 50 zone. When he failed to stop, police pursued Dewsbury as he swerved across multiple lanes of traffic. He eventually stopped in Blackbird Lees Road and ran away, but officers arrested him. The 29-year-old was jailed for a year and 2 months.
Fire crews have dealt with a fire at Benson Marina in Oxfordshire. A storage facility was destroyed in the blaze, which started in the early hours of this morning. 6 engines were called to stop the fire from spreading to other buildings and the boats moored on the River Thames.
You're watching ITV News Meridian in the Thames Valley. Coming up.
Engineering work with a difference. Repairs to the stunning 180-year-old Grade 2 listed Ouse Valley Viaduct.
And you can find more on today's top stories in the region throughout the day on our website. Go to itv.com/Meridian. You can call us on 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can follow us on social media. We love to hear from you.
Now, as school budgets tighten, music lessons are at risk of disappearing from the timetable. But many fear this is a grave mistake, as it will prevent the next generation of musicians coming from a diverse range of backgrounds.
At around £40 an hour for private lessons, there are concerns that learning an instrument could soon become a hobby reserved for the rich, and in many cases it's being left to charities to pick up the slack, as Rahim Rashid explains.
They say practice makes perfect, but at what cost? Lessons like these are vital for children to be taught music, whether that's on the drums, the piano, or by singing. Free lessons at Upper Shirley High School in Southampton are helping close the gaps for pupils who can't afford lessons, but teachers say many schools are struggling to keep up.
A lot of the challenges that schools face are built around funding. Funding to have the right technology and the traditional instruments and maintain that equipment in schools. A lot of schools, particularly at the primary level, will have someone leading music who might not be a specialist, and whilst they do a great job and they work really hard to do that, they might feel less competent to develop students musically in the long term.
A recent Ofsted report found instrumental music lessons are being dropped from timetables as schools try to balance their budgets. The Musicians Union says parents are having to pay around £40 a lesson for their children to go private.
We're letting ourselves drift into a place where music is something that you have to be able to be well off to afford. And that's a tragedy, because we need to see a diversity of people moving up into the music industry. It can't just be all about people who've been able to pay, people in private education. The reason that the UK's music industry is such a success story for us internationally is because we've got such a broad range of people in it, and we really need to invest in that to keep it going.
The Department for Education says it's introduced a new national plan asking schools to teach music for at least an hour a week for 5 to 14-year-olds, adding it's spending £79 million a year on music hubs and introducing a £10,000 tax-free bursary for trainee music teachers.
Yo, it's me, my bro. Making music, who knows?
It's often being left to charities like the Compound Community Hub, which run free evening classes to give the next generation a voice.
I've got ASD, which is autism syndrome, and I find it quite difficult to get my music out there and for people to understand me. That's why I wrote a song about autism, for people to also know that you're not alone. You can come here, be yourself, you don't have to worry about teachers saying, oh, you have 10 minutes left.
But just like in schools, community projects like these also come at a cost.
Funding is a massive issue, obviously, to help run the sessions up and down the country with the cuts, the cost of living, energy bills, everything like that. People are struggling, so yeah, it is. A lot of people are marginalised, especially in certain areas, and they don't have access to these kind of provisions. So I think it's key having something for the youth.
With charities and schools working together, it's hoped with lessons like these, there'll still be another generation of musical maestros. Rahim Rashid, ITV News.
Upper Shirley High, sounding good. The ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. Here's Charlene White.
Hundreds of homes flooded, families evacuated, and nationwide travel disruption as Storm Babette hits the UK. Weather warnings have been extended by the Met Office as some are told they won't be able to return home before Christmas. The UN Secretary-General issues a plea for life-saving aid to be allowed across the border into Gaza. And England face a tough test this weekend in the Rugby World Cup semi-finals as they prepare to face reigning champs South Africa. So join us for those stories and much more at 6:30. Well, here torrential rain has caused localised flooding and travel disruption across parts of Oxfordshire and Wiltshire. 3 people had to be rescued after their car became stranded in floodwater at Longcott near Farringdon this morning. GWR services between Swindon and the West Country have been closed after the line flooded near Royal Wootton Bassett, and gardens were flooded in the nearby village of Hook, with some residents in Swindon waking up to flash floods.
Everyone on the street was out as well, just trying to sort stuff out, people going back from work, just manic, and but then everything got under control, just sweeping the water off the dries, getting the manholes removed, and yeah, it went as quickly as it came, but it wasn't nice.
Some hospitals in our region have confirmed they have rack concrete, which is known to be weaker and have a limited life before it becomes dangerous. Southampton General Hospital, St Mary's Community Hospital in Portsmouth, St Richard's Hospital in Chichester and Frimley Park Hospital in Camberley are all affected. The trusts have joined a national programme to monitor and maintain safety.
Now, as railway engineering projects go, work being carried out on one part of the Brighton Main Line right now is pretty complex.
Yes, Network Rail is repairing the Ouse Valley Viaduct, a stunning 180-year-old bridge between Haywards Heath and Balcombe. And because it's Grade 2 listed, engineers must ensure it retains its heritage features. With more, James Dunham.
Nestled in the mid-Sussex countryside, the Ouse Valley Viaduct is a photographer's dream. 450 metres long, with 37 creatively crafted arches. The elegance of this Victorian infrastructure is now, however, looking a little tired.
She's an old lady, she's 180 years old. The stone's been here for a long, long time. We're actually quarrying this in western France to come and do the repairs to get her back to her glory.
Restoring her to an 1800s style is a challenge in 2023. A conservationist has been brought in to oversee each key detail.
In 1838, when they first started making this, they used imperial-sized bricks. So we've had to have bespoke bricks made to match those both in colour and size. And we've used a local firm to keep the sustainability. They just don't make buildings like this anymore. It's real attention to detail back in the 1800s, but we just don't give to our buildings nowadays.
Since opening in 1841, the viaduct has connected coast to capital. Although rumours suggest Queen Victoria, heading for her holidays in Brighton, would stop her train just before it reached the bridge, apparently worried about its height at 29 metres tall. Not that people are put off today. Above my head is a set of tracks where 20 trains thunder across every single hour, with the viaduct supporting the railway made up of 11 million bricks, and as part of this project, 2,600 of them are being replaced. The work on 8 of the arches, crucial for train passengers.
The viaduct is located on the Brighton Main Line, so the main part of railway route between Brighton and London. Really critical part of the network. We have about 17 million passenger journeys travelling over the viaduct every year.
So if this isn't maintained, then there could be big trouble.
Yes, it's really important that this part of the railway remains open.
Brick by brick, ensuring rail reliability and historic resplendence continues. James Dunham, ITV News, near Haywards Heath.
Wonderful to see.
Labour of love though, isn't it? God.
Yeah, going to take some time. OK, time for sport now with Mark McQuillan. And Mark, the Premier League's back and Bournemouth really need a win, don't they?
It really is a crunch game for them, Andrew, you've got to say, as part of a full set of Premier League and EFL fixtures after the international break. There's a tough test for Brighton, who visit champions Manchester City, while Bournemouth, who we were just talking about, host Wolves, now managed, of course, by Gary O'Neill, who guided the Cherries to safety last season. The club are still looking for their first win of this campaign, and their manager knows the importance of giving the fans something to cheer tomorrow.
Everything starts from what we show on the pitch, you know. We have to show this hunger, we have to make them like what they are watching, no? And it's true that we start well the game, and everyone keeps the intensity, and we build a good momentum like we did in some of the previous games when we played here.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
In the EFL, Southampton will want a positive response to their draw at home to Rotherham last time out. They visit Hull, while in League One, leaders Portsmouth host Carlisle. Oxford United, a point behind Pompey, are at home too against Blackpool. Reading go to Charlton. In League Two, Swindon in 6th are away to Salford, and Crawley have a home game against Crewe. In the Women's Super League, Brighton will be looking for their first win since the opening day of the season. Melissa Phillips' side face a daunting trip to champions Chelsea on Sunday, and that's part of a run of games against Manchester United, Manchester City and Arsenal coming up.
It's about being as competitive as we can be and knowing what we need to grow on. Again, the performance that we put out, we have to work hard, we have to be gritty, we have to be resilient, but we want to be those things in every single game. We're not naive to the test that we're going to face in the next 4 matches, but we're taking it one game at a time.
A horse rider from Southampton is preparing to represent Team GB following an accident that almost left her paralysed. Jo Dunn is heading to Paris to compete in the European Dressage Championships. And as Sarah Gom reports, it's quite a journey for an amateur rider who almost had to give up the sport she loves.
Representing your country in sport is an achievement so many only dream of, and for Jo Dunn it's a feat of huge determination after a horse riding accident left her needing to learn to walk again due to damage to her back. The 37-year-old was treated by air ambulance crews following the accident in 2017. She'd been enjoying a riding lesson when she came off her horse, which landed on top of her. Thankfully, the injuries Jo did suffer have not stopped her getting back in the saddle. She'll soon compete in France at the only European dressage competition specifically for Iberian horses.
After my accident originally, it was about being able to walk properly again, get my full strength back, being able to run, cycle, just getting back to some sort of normality. Being able to ride a horse was all I wanted to be able to do originally. And then sort of the goals have got sort of stretched further and further. But it's just been a really enjoyable journey.
Jo still has nerve damage and near constant pain, but credits her lifelong passion for horse riding and her new horse Lenny as a motivation to keep going against the odds.
Lenny has been a godsend. Because of his sensitive nature and his calm temperament, he has adapted to Jo's disability, and that's what's formed the really strong bond and partnership between them. And I think that's what makes Jo the person she is today. You know, she's going to do well in whatever she does, but she's passionate about the horses.
I look back and think, wow, I'm lucky to be here, but then I'm lucky to have met Shirley, I'm lucky to have found Lenny. Everything's fallen into place.
Jo and Lenny head to Paris next week, with Jo understandably saying she thanks her lucky stars for just being there at all, no matter what the result. Sarah Gom, ITV News, Fair Oak.
Big weekend of sport coming up, including, of course, tomorrow night live on ITV, England, South Africa in the Rugby World Cup semi-finals.
What's your score predictions?
Stacey, I will just say that South Africa are the favourites going into this.
But I don't think they're going to win.
You're backing England.
We've got a chance. We've got
well
to back
played, Stacey.
Don't ask Pacey, he always gets it wrong. Thanks, Mark. Now, few of us have ever got the chance to see what's going on beneath our streets, but artists are coming together in Brighton to shine a light on just that.
Yes, they've created a multimedia display in a tunnel that's generally been boarded off to the public for the past 100 years. Andy Dickinson has been to take a look.
Come with me as we enter a part of Brighton that few have ever seen before. This tunnel runs under Brighton Station. It used to be used to station horse-drawn carriages, taxis. It's now been transformed into something completely different.
Here amongst assorted railway detritus, a strange subterranean disco seems to have appeared, its otherworldly presence signalling a new twist on the city's digital festival. The Dreamy Place transferring this weekend to Brighton from Crawley.
You have no idea how much I've cried over this festival. Out of joy and frustration. It's important to me because, especially in Crawley, nothing like we did had ever been done before. So doing outdoor film trails, pop-up video game arcade in a 15th century priory building. And obviously Brighton is like the base of the original festival. So we're using this as our sort of like our base and our home.
We kind of took the inspiration of a journey of transport. Only a Few Find the Way, the title, is a quote from Alice in Wonderland, which has huge resonance here in Brighton. So we kind of want people to feel like they've kind of fallen down the rabbit hole a little bit. You're amongst Brighton, you're in the gubbins of it, you're in the guts of it, but you're kind of outside of the world as well. I hope people come in here and maybe have a chance to meditate, reflect, but also just be amazed at what's happening under the city and what lies under people's noses they don't get to see. I hope people feel a sense of wonder.
As I stand here, you can actually hear passengers going back and forth on the platform ahead. It really is quite a unique space, this tunnel stretching back another 100 yards, apparently ending in a rifle range. This rare glimpse of Brighton open until Sunday evening.
Wow, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Wonderful, absolutely.
Unlike the weather. Let's get the details. Here's Shireen Jordan.
Whatever the weather, it always feels like home. Valent Heat Pumps and Boilers sponsor ITV Meridian Weather.
A very good evening to you. Well, I'm afraid the unsettled theme does continue into the weekend with a combination of sunshine and showers, some of which could be rather lively at times. We could see them merge into a longer spell of rain. Quite blustery conditions on Saturday, but brighter on Sunday and fewer showers. That is the good news. If we look at the detail, you can see we've got low pressure firmly in charge of our weather at the moment, bringing this very autumnal feeling weather with at times some wet and windy conditions. But on Sunday, a brief ridge of high pressure takes charge and we should see something a little bit drier and brighter in the offing. But for tonight, clear spells at times. Then we see these showers push their way in north and eastwards. Some of those could be rather heavy and persistent and perhaps merge into a longer spell of rain. The wind's whipping up around those showers as well. We could see a rumble or two of thunder, perhaps some mist and fog patches developing by dawn, but quite a mild night with that minimum temperature falling away to between 11 and 14 degrees Celsius. I think showers from the word go on Saturday, quite blustery conditions as well, and then perhaps merging into a longer spell of rain for a time, perhaps a few brighter spells here and there, but the maximum temperature tomorrow ranging from about 13 to 16 degrees Celsius. Well, here are your times of high water for Poole at 19 minutes past 3 in the morning and again in the afternoon at 5 minutes to 4. Well, here's your outlook then as we head into the weekend. So with low pressure firmly in charge, we've got unsettled conditions into Saturday, and then Sunday something a little bit drier and brighter in the offing. Bye-bye for now.
Valent Heat Pumps and Boilers sponsor ITV Meridian Weather.
That's all from us. Charlene White is next from us. Good night.
Good night.